All right, so we're back again. Sorry about editing it right there, slashing clips together. I might have made a mistake in what I was saying. The next or didn't properly read the next sentence and might have let a bad word slip out of my mouth. So I'm back here again now in comic book filter on the video feed, just for good measure and some variety, I suppose. And my daughter thinks it's the coolest setting, so that's probably why actually. Anyways, we just talked about were open-ended policy questions. Now, open-ended policy questions of fact, value, and policy, or fact, value, and process, are open because they ask you to select from a plethora of answers and provide the best policy answer for each scenario, right? So you're supposed to, on a fact-based one, you ask yourself whether or not this is going to happen at all, right? Whether or not the United States will take out Saddam Hussein in the example. And then you can come up with your own reasons as to why that will happen and why that will not happen, you think, if you're answering that question. If you answer the other side of the question, the should, then you have to give a moral argument and provide the moral argument for the best reason or the best way, the best methodology you create from your own or from available plans or available policy options. You choose the best case scenario and present that. And the how is you either craft from the bottom up or, again, provide like a selection of available policies to provide the how they think you'll actually get it done, like a policy proposal for removal of Saddam Hussein in this example. So now there are a series of questions we'll look at which are called closed questions. They're closed questions because the option of how to answer it is not up to you. You're not asked to craft or create a policy. These are shorter and more direct sort of questions you'll see in some policy debates and some speaking series or some policy discussions. And they're closed questions. We'll see pretty immediately why it means they're closed questions, right? So there's a factual value and policy version of these as well, of course. And we'll switch to the screen to read those now. So the factual version of a question, right, which the topic again is the possible removal of Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq. The factual version of the question would read, will the United States remove Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq? So you basically, a closed question is asking a yes or no answer, and then a how, right? So the value version would read, should the United States remove Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq? The question is asking the speaker to comment on the benefits and costs of possibly undertaking this course of action, including moral or ethical costs or geopolitical costs or whatever tenable cost you would like to bring into the analysis. The policy version of the question would read, can the United States remove Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq? Right, the question is asking the speaker to evaluate the potential of the United States to actually remove Saddam Hussein from power. So it's about the possibility. So the policy version is the possibility of, is it a real world possibility that could happen and how will it happen? The should is it a moral possibility or a morally desirable outcome that would happen? And the factual version is simply, will it or will it not happen? Right? So an answer could or would be phrased like this. We can see the United States will or will not, should or should not, can or cannot remove Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq for two important reasons, first and second. Right? So the biggest thing about unified analysis is the way that these questions are answered. So we say that yes, the United States should remove Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq because, and each of the answers we give to this is the why. The evidence we provide as well as the subpoints that answer the question are unified because they are each individually sufficient answers to the question. So for example, they're not contingent upon each other. So you say, for example, is Japan now the most powerful nation in the world? As an example of this unified analysis response. Thesis. So basically, your answer to the question is Japan is not the most powerful nation in the world. So you answered the question as well as restating it for clarity in the answer. Why? Because it's economically dependent. So the subpoint under that, the disintegration of the Warsaw Pact has made it economically dependent. Because it lacks the resources necessary without the global market. A, point under that, economic stability. B, the largest Near Eastern consumer of American goods. C, or 3 rather, because it lacks political will. NATO, in the position it makes necessary for political security. Its position makes necessary for political security. So each of these 3 points, because it's economically dependent, because it lacks resources necessary without the global market, and because of lack of political will, are all each independently capable of answering the question as to why Japan is not the most powerful nation in the world. The number 2 does not depend upon number 1 in order to function. Each of these is a substantial and full answer to the question why Japan is not the most powerful nation in the world. The subpoints under each of these, the disintegration of the Warsaw Pact, these evidence, these warrants to these claims or these reasons, right, are also independent of each other. So if they said, for number 2, right, lacks the resources necessary without the global market. So both A, the economic stability in the EU market, that it needs access to that, and as the largest consumer of American goods is dependent upon American goods for its necessary resource supplementation. either of those are proof that it lacks resources necessary, right? So even if you forgot to say point B, or and you only had point A, or you only had point A and not point B, it doesn't change the validity and the tenability of the answer, right? It's all independently possible of supporting the point that it lacks the resources necessary without the global market. They're not contingent or chained, which means like it's not like if they attack argument one or argument one falls out, or you forget argument one, or you lose argument one, that argument two and three are not going to function. They'll still function just fine. So each individual point you bring up, each individual reason for answering the question is sufficient in and of itself. And that's why it's a unified analysis. They all, as a unified body, each independently answer the question that's being proposed, even if the rest of them are deleted from the discussion or taken out of the debate. So here's another example of the question. Again, this is old. I think this is like about the time that W. Bush was elected. So this doesn't necessarily apply to the current climate, mind you. Can the Republicans continue as the dominant political party? Answer, yes. Thesis, the Republicans continue as the dominant political party. Why? Because they are fielding winning candidates. Subpoint A, they're attracted to conservatives yet do not alienate moderates. B, because they're co-opting winning issues. C, popular issues. Death penalty, tax breaks, pushing political reform. Subpoint into that, term limits and campaign financing. So if you look here at the structure again, this number one issue, or number one in bold here, is an argument that is independent of the other arguments in this answer, right? Because they're fielding winning candidates is enough sufficiently to answer why Republicans continue to be the dominant national party in 2001 at least, or 2001. Now, each of these subpoints is sufficient to give evidence to or to prove that they're fielding winning candidates. Why do they field winning candidates? Because they're attracted to conservatives and they don't alienate moderates, right? So that means they're going to have more of the base and more of the percentage of vote to win elections because they're co-opting winning issues. Again, even if you don't get rid of the attracted to conservatives and don't alienate moderates point, the B point there, because they're co-opting winning issues, is sufficient in and of itself to prove why they're fielding winning candidates. And then C point, popular issues. They have popular issues which are big swing voter issues. Death penalty, tax breaks, and pushing political reform. Again, each of these subpoints is enough to evidence the C point, the popular issues, which proves the 1 point. And again, so under that we have the political reform is the point 3 there. Term limits and campaign financing are both political reforms that are popular to individuals who would then want to vote in the candidate for candidates who would share those beliefs or would promote those, right? So each of these breakdowns here is not dependent upon any of the other subpoints in order to function. So say that the subpoint B here, because they're co-opting winning issues, gets taken out, or you forget to say it, or it gets responded to by the opponent. So it goes away from the debate round, let's say, or the debate policy talk. And say A does too. And say under C, the tax breaks subpoint gets pushed out. You still are winning the argument because you still have death penalty and pushing political reforms as well as the subpoint under that, which prove they're still going to field winning candidates and you're still winning the upper hand in the argument. So it makes it impossible to only hit part of your argument in a debate round or in a policy scenario, to only attack one or two of your subpoints and not have answers for everything and still have the opposition to the policy win the day. Because each of these points in and of itself is sufficient evidence to show why your side is right, why the position you're supporting is correct. And if one of them stands at that point, you've gotten enough credence to show benefit to passing the policy, and you have enough credence to show benefit in your argument winning the day. There are more examples down here that we can look at, or y'all can look at online to get a better idea of what the unified analysis looks like. But the biggest thing to remember is the lack of contingency in an answer to a question. Contingency means something is contingent upon something else. So like my point A is contingent upon my point, or rather my point B is contingent upon my point A. If you get rid of point A, I can't get to point B, so the whole argument falls apart. If my arguments 2 and 3 are dependent upon argument 1 carrying in order to make sense or to work, then if you just attack the heck out of argument 1 and defeat it, then the whole plan, the whole case, the whole policy falls apart, right? So this is making like independent kind of splinter cells of your arguments that can then function independently and be enough in and of themselves to win a debate, a policy round, a policy discussion, or be enough reason to pass a policy in the public sphere. So you can, like I said, you can go down and look at the rest of the examples if you like.